Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Daily Drop-In Morning Show, where we are live every single morning at 7 a.m. Eastern on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. Special shout out to those of you who listen after the fact on Teach Better Talk podcast. We love being able to have audiences with us live and also hearing your commentary afterwards. So thank you for being a part of this Teach Better community. We have a ton in store. It is Wednesday, so it's a little bit of a special day here on the show. It's April 20th, so we have a ton to talk about. We have holidays, good news stories, and an incredible guest that I kind of feel like you should be familiar with. But if not, I'm glad you're meeting him. We'll be right back to start the show. Good morning, everyone. We are thrilled that you are here. It is Wednesday, April 20th. Dan Kreiness is with us. Dan, how are you?
I'm good. I was just explaining before we went live here that it's spring break for me. And so, I know that you've had this kind of theme of recharging this week. So that's what I'm doing. I'm off. My kids have off this week too. And so we've just been hanging out, finding things to do and entertaining ourselves and each other. And it's been great. It's been a great little, hiatus. And I feel like our spring break is later in the year than most spring breaks, which is kind of good and bad. It's bad because it takes longer to get to, but it's good because I feel like once we get back, the end of the year is just going to fly by. So things are good. Can't really complain.
I love it. No, it's wonderful that you're able to choose to get up early and celebrate your spring break here with us on the Daily Drop-In. I know that you probably have other options of how you could be spending your time bright and early in the morning, but we really appreciate you being here. I know that the show is not necessarily the most convenient when everyone is getting ready for their day and headed into work. It's easier to listen rather than be live with us. And so finding a time over spring break that you can hop on the show is just so convenient. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. A little more sleep, but maybe I'll catch up on that later. Who knows?
Yes, you can take a nap after this. So before we get too far into this conversation, though, as we're welcoming our community in, hey, Dan, would you mind sharing a little about yourself, kind of what you do in education, how you're connected to the Teach Better team, all good things?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm Dr. Dan Kreiness. My role in education is that of an instructional coach for digital learning. I think districts call them different things, essentially a technology coach, but heavy on the instruction versus I know sometimes technology coaches kind of get unfortunately lumped in with like IT and fixing and troubleshooting. That's not me. I'm the instructional guy. We have other IT technicians to do that. I'm located here in Connecticut, and I've kind of bounced back and forth over the last handful of years between administrative roles and instructional coaching roles mostly, but I really love what I do, and I love opportunities to get to support teachers, support their instruction, and really kind of push them to innovate in their classrooms and get them and certainly their students to be future focused and future ready. And that's what I think I bring to the table just about every day in my work. And I'm connected to Teach Better because I'm a fairly regular contributor and participant in the Administrator Mastermind, which if you're watching this and you've not been to Administrator Mastermind because you think that it's just for administrators, I want to correct you right there because it is not. And I know, Ray, you'll afford me the opportunity in our conversation to plug my podcast, but every episode of my podcast, I end it by saying that no matter who you are or where you are a leader of learning. And so I do believe that people are leaders regardless of their role or their title. And I get so much value out of not just participating on Tuesday mornings, or you can do Tuesday evenings too, with the other members of the admin mastermind, but even continuing the conversation throughout the week in Voxer land as well. So it's been great to be connected to that community. So that's how I connect with Teach Better. Plus, little shameless plug. No, that's not really a plug for me, but I'm really excited about going to the Teach Better conference coming up next fall as well. I'm registered. I'll be on Podcasters Row. I don't know whether I'll be presenting yet, but even if I'm not, I am really, really excited to be there. So that's all the ways that I'm connected with Teach Better.
So many good things. I love it. No, Admin Mastermind is such a fun crew, right? It started during COVID. It's a free space for open facilitation. And, it's interesting because while there's so many different hubs for different educators or coaches, administrators, any leaders in general to get involved, Admin Mastermind really is a special crew. I will give a shout out. That group does need to be in a leadership role in some capacity, but instructional coaches are very, very much welcome. So whether you are an administrator at a district level, a building level, a coach at a district level or a building level, there are so many great ways to get involved in Admin Mastermind. And if you're reflecting right now and saying, I don't have that title, but I definitely consider myself a leader, there's so many ways for you to get involved in our Teach Better community for sure. So I love being able to kind of see what hubs people kind of work their way into within our Teach Better family. You can find out more about that at teachbetter.com for all those details. But Dan, I'm thrilled that you mentioned the conference because you are one of our podcasters. And I'm so excited to have you share your voice at the conference. I don't know how many people know this, but we have a Podcasters Row. It's this incredible space where podcasters will be sharing their voice live, recording episodes live, and welcoming in guests, I hope, that are at the conference. So, Dan, what inspired you to be a part of that?
I think just not getting to go the first time you guys did it back in 2019. Because it was the first time. I mean, I knew about it. I was already connected with the team, but it just didn't happen for me in terms of making the necessary arrangements to get to go in person. I heard how amazing it was, and I definitely. Oh, good morning, Rochelle. Nice to see you. I definitely get FOMO a lot, and I really felt like I missed out on something great. And I haven't made all the necessary arrangements yet, even for this one, but it's something I've been looking forward to. In unfortunately the couple of years that you haven't been able to run the conference, but I'm going to get myself there this year. I'm pretty sure I'm going to drive. I think it's somewhere around a 7-hour drive, but I'm going to do it. And I'm really looking forward to it, and I have some experience covering live events like that, conferences, especially the ISTE conference, where I've done live streams and podcasts and thing before and stuff like that before. So, it'd be really, really cool to cover the event almost like a media member and podcaster. So, I think it's going to be exciting. I know you guys are excited about putting on another one because it'll be 3 years since you did the first one, and I know it was a big success. Good morning, Brad. Nice to see you.
Well, I appreciate it, Dan. We're excited to have you there. And Brad Hughes, Joshua Stamper, shout out to those two incredible Teach Better team members who are really allowing the Podcasters Row to come together. They chose this specific space at the venue that they thought was the most perfect fit. It's this beautiful, I cannot emphasize beautiful enough. It's this beautiful STEM space. And so I'm so excited for us to convert that incredible space. I would love to encourage you guys to go look up the venue because this room might be my favorite one in the entire building, but it's an incredible space that will be transformed for our Podcasters Row to allow podcasters from all over the world come all together and record episodes, bring in guests of attendees at the event to share their voice and kind of everything in between. So if you're listening right now, we have a very limited sign up for the Podcasters Row. So if you're interested, definitely get on board sooner rather than later, because I even know the list I was looking at on Monday was about as full as I think it's going to get. But if you want to sneak your name in, there might be an opportunity for all of you to join Podcasters Row or get involved in other ways. Dan, I appreciate that you shared that you submitted a proposal to speak. That's still open until the end of the month. So lots of opportunities here. I appreciate the plugs. It's awesome.
Yeah, like I said, I'm really looking forward to it, regardless of whether or not I get to speak. Just being there and connecting. I really love going to conferences and ed camps and getting to meet everyone. As a matter of fact, to be honest with you, I was thinking about that with this theme that you've had this week on the drop-ins of refreshing or reflecting or whatever we want to call it. And one of the things that's helped me so much over the years. Maybe not get so stressed or overwhelmed or overworked is the ability to communicate with and connect with other educators. I think it was like 2015 or 2016 when I kind of made that shift to being more of a connected educator, not just within my school or my district, but just more globally. I didn't know Teach Better yet back then, but I started getting on Voxer and more active on Twitter. Podcast wasn't quite there yet, but it was soon to come. And the more I realized how powerful it was to not just be siloed, in your own classroom, in your own school, in your own district, it really helped. And so I guess that's my first little nugget. You didn't even ask me, but it really is. But finding opportunities to connect, whether it's just online like this. I mean, Ray and I have never met in person, but we've spoken a bunch of times, right? We will get to meet in October, but haven't yet, and there's so many people that I communicate with regularly that I haven't met in person, but still they help me so much, like in that admin mastermind as well. Professional development at its finest, in my opinion. So, I'm looking forward to coming to the conference. But even between now and then, and over the last few years, just getting more connected and more involved, virtually speaking, with other educators who either share similar interests or backgrounds, or just that same kind of like mentality in terms of where we're trying to take education. It's been great.
So powerful. I'm excited to dive further into that during our brainstorm bank and really pick your brain on all the things, maybe different strategies you have that have really helped you be successful in this space. Because I know we are constantly looking to refresh our routines, and whether that is our routines instructionally in the classroom, at a leadership level in a building, or anything in between, it's going to be a great time for us to ensure that the next 6 weeks or 15 weeks, however much time we all have left, is really, really used intentionally. So we'll get back to that topic here in just a minute, Dan. We are going to take a moment to record our moment of gratitude. We use an app here on the Daily Drop-In called Happy Feed. It was a recommendation from an incredible guest that we had about 7 or 8 weeks ago. And we love being able to take a time every single morning, just about this time, to be able to document something that we are grateful for and appreciative of. So, Dan, as you think about your morning this morning, obviously on spring break, but what is something that you are grateful for currently?
I'm gonna say my kids, because talk about refreshing. Sometimes life just happens, right? And when we get these opportunities, like I've had this week on my spring break, to just be off and hang out together, we're having a great time, and we're not doing a lot in terms of going places and spending a lot of money, but we're just enjoying like these little moments we have. And special shout out, I guess, to my daughter who turned 8 over the weekend. So, we've been able to, like, we had Easter Sunday was her birthday. And so we had a great long weekend full of, birthday celebrations and just getting to enjoy time with my kids. I've been really grateful for that this week.
I love it. I mean, it's wonderful to say, but even just painting that picture, it gives me like all those good feelings in the morning, thinking about the fun that you guys must have and will continue to have throughout this break. That's so exciting. We're going to be right back with some good news, including some wacky holidays and a good news article. So we'll be right back. Good morning, everyone. We have Dr. Dan Kreiness with us, and we are having already a great conversation here on the show. Dan, you have a lot of fans. People in the comments are so excited that you're live with us and here to share your story. You've already shared so many tips and tricks already, but guys, we're just getting started. So I'm excited to continue to learn more about the work you're doing in your passion space. Here on the Daily Drop-In, we always love to find a reason to celebrate. So that includes goofy holidays as well as maybe more serious holidays, and of course, a good news story. Dan, are you always up for a good celebration?
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. So we have some holidays today that obviously we could all choose to be a part of. The first one is that it's Chinese Language Day. Dan, do you speak any other languages?
No, I was a Spanish student in my secondary schooling years, even in college a little bit, but I think I've forgotten more than I ever even learned. So
It's such an incredible
no.
skill. I think Chinese would be such a beautiful language to learn. I would love to learn that one. I used to be relatively fluent in Hebrew, but gosh, I'm telling you, when you don't use it like day in, day out, you really lose it. I do love Brad Hughes on the team, who's actually in the comments this morning, speaks French. And I just think it's so cool that Brad not only is a perfecter of the puns, but also great at being able to throw in other language as well. But maybe we need to set a goal to learn another language.
Yeah, I know that. I mean, I never really tried the Duolingo app, but I know a lot of people who use stuff like that, and
See?
they it's gamified. It makes learning really fun, and I think pretty quick and easy too. So
Sounds like a good sponsor for Daily Drop-In, just saying. It's also a national,
Duolingo, hey, if someone's watching,
yeah, love it.
throw a little something something to the Teach Better team.
Let's make it happen. It's also National Lookalike Day and Lima Bean Respect Day. Do you have respect for the lima beans?
I do. I don't eat them often, but when I do, I enjoy them. I do want to give a nod though to Lookalike Day.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we are not identical, but I do legitimately have a twin brother.
Really?
We're actually fraternal though. So if you don't know, there are identical twins and they look alike, and there are fraternal twins who do not. We're fraternal. I would say we look like brothers, but not twins. So we're not identical. We look similar, although he's got some more hair and I got the glasses. But yeah, it was cool.
Well,
And I also hung out with him a couple of times this weekend too. So shout out to my twin brother.
I love it. I think you got like the good looks and charm, and he just got some other, qualities that
Appreciate that.
aren't worth
Yeah.
mentioning.
I won't tell him you said that.
It's also National Banana Day. Maybe we should all maybe start our morning this morning with some fruit. I think that sounds like a good idea. And then this afternoon, you can celebrate that it's National Cheddar Fries Day. That sounds like a few calories. I'm just saying.
Hmm. Well, I guess if you just start with a banana, then you're a little bit ahead of the game in terms of being healthy, and then
So
you can go for the fries with cheddar.
cheddar fries. Yeah, I mean, it just sounds really heavy. The last thing is maybe how you can end your day. It's National Pineapple Upside Down Cake Day. So, it seems like today is going to be a day full of really great food options, which actually even has to do with our good news story. Dan, are you a fan of candy at all?
I am a fan of candy.
You have
I
favorite
happen to have a pretty big sweet tooth.
Really? Oh, perfect. I love this. What is your favorite go-to candy?
That's a great question, and it's easy to answer. I love Milky Way bars.
Ooh, see? Okay, very interesting. Our good news story is all about candy. It says, here's what your candy preference says about your personality. So it says, do you like sour candy more than other flavors? It's likely you might be an extrovert. It's just one takeaway from a new survey of candy lovers where it looked at a person's preference for certain sweets that might speak volumes about their personality or lifestyle choices. In addition to being extroverted, if you like sour candy, you're also typically identified as sarcastic and funny. Interesting. Meanwhile, chocolate lovers overwhelmingly describe themselves as optimistic, on occasion shy, and if they like mint, they were seen as very thoughtful. It was a poll that was conducted by the Jelly Belly Candy Company, for those of you who love jelly beans, and they wanted to dive deeper into the habits and beliefs of their sweet lovers. So as they went into all these different all these different characteristics, They found that some people were more likely to be night owls or early birds, and kind of everything in between. So maybe an interesting study that we'd be able to bring to our students or use as a fun fact while building relationships with colleagues, that apparently the candy can predict things about us.
That's pretty fascinating. A couple of nods to comments that are being made. Yeah, Brienne says she's allergic to pineapple, so I guess no pineapple upside down cake for her. But maybe, hey, if you enjoy bananas or cheddar fries, you could still partake. And I'm curious, actually, I wonder if Brad's still watching because he's a Canadian, and I know one of the food staples, if you will, or at least in my American opinion, it's a staple of Canadian cuisine is the poutine. And
Yes.
I'm wondering how Brad feels about cheddar on fries because I don't think that's well, I don't know. I mean, they have cheese curds. Are they cheddar? I don't know. All I know about poutine is like cheese curds with some gravy on top of fries, and I don't know how Brad feels about that. But cheddar fries, I mean, that sounds delicious too.
I mean, it sounds like today is all about choosing the right food that's going to get you through the day. So if you're looking for something a little healthy, we suggest a banana to start your day off. Then we're going to get into lunch and maybe try something a little bit heavier, some salty, right? And then ending the day with some candy or some sweets, I think is a good idea.
It looks like Brad is okay with cheddar on fries. He said cheddar on fries for the win
For the
with an
win.
exclamation.
Hey, you know what? Anything that Brad Hughes likes, I think has like the stamp of approval from the Teach Better team. But I will say, I kind of like my fries basic with some salt. So I think when you start adding stuff on top, it gets a little complicated.
I'm not even a big dipper when it comes to fries. I don't really do ketchup or every once in a while I'll throw some like mayo. Just I don't know. People have a weird thing about mayo, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
But normally speaking, just like you, just salt.
Basic. Yeah. I will say I have a complaint that there's a place in my area where you can get like wings. Are you a wing person?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can order wings, and when it's delivered, it typically comes with like a free basket of fries or a free side of fries. And I'm like, holy moly, a place that will give you free French fries? Like, I want to move into this restaurant. Here's the problem. Here's the problem. They put like a sweet seasoning, like a sugary seasoning. Why are you messing with my fries? Like
Hmm.
I can't eat them. I need to order them without seasoning, and they still come with that hint of like cinnamon sugar. I don't know what they put on it. It's terrible. They're ruining the French fries for the world. That's all I'm saying.
Maybe we need to introduce them to cheddar on their fries.
Seriously, I'll take anything on a fry over like sugar. That's not right. Don't put sugar on my fries. I don't know. I'm upset. Cheddar sounds better than that. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely.
Dan, I want to make sure we get into all the insight that I know you wanted to share on the show. We have a lot to be able to dive into with your expertise in so many different areas, but especially in your strategies for refreshing our routines to ensure that we end the year strong. But we'll be right back to be able to dive into that. By the way, if you are a fry lover, we'd love to know what you put on your fries in the meantime. Good morning, everyone. We are headed into our brainstorm bank. And for those of you who are familiar with the show, this is just an intentional time where we are able to ask you if you need anything. We know we continue to brainstorm constantly throughout our day in education. And so if you're currently brainstorming anything in your day, whether it be a way to reach a student better than ever, a behavior concern that you're seeing, or any sort of strategy that you're looking to be a better leader, feel free to throw it in the comments. While Dan and I don't promise that we'll have the perfect answer or the best answer for you, we definitely would love to be a part of that brainstorming process to point you in a specific direction. So please know that our community is here to support you anytime you need it. On the flip side, Dan, I know we've discussed it, that there's a theme this week about refreshing our routines and really being intentional. What comes to mind when I talk about refreshing routines?
Like I've already said, I think, just not siloing yourself and closing yourself in and boxing yourself into like the four walls of your classroom or your school and really branching out and getting connected. I also want to throw in one other one that I think unfortunately has become kind of controversial in our line of work, but I don't think it should be. Try, please try not to take work home with you.
Mm.
Um, I know that's hard, and it is somewhat controversial because, of course, you got people like me saying don't do it, but then you have teachers and people who um, just get a lot of work, or maybe, and this is kind of controversial too, may create a lot of work for themselves. But as a teacher, when I was in the classroom, I think the more I was able, or I guess the less I was able to bring home with me, the happier I was, the more time I had to devote to my family and life outside of school. And I know it's not easy. Like, I know it's not easy. Um, but I would say to really, really utilize prep periods and off times in your schedule where you can catch up on work, lesson plan, maybe grade papers. And I know, again, this is a controversial statement, but if your teacher contract, if you're a teacher or administrator, if your contract is like mine and you already have to stay like 15 or maybe a half an hour um, later than the students do at your school, utilize that time. I'm not encouraging people to stay after contractual hours, but maybe they need to, and maybe spending an extra half an hour or 45 minutes or even an hour at school after hours will help prevent, maybe that'll make you feel better than having to do it at home for an hour at 9 o'clock at night when you want to start unwinding for bed, or spending time with your kids, or spending time with your partner, your spouse. Like, I think sometimes people are too quick to just up and go at 3 o'clock or 2:30 or whenever your school ends. And I don't know, because it's like, why are you the first one out of your school building if you're also going to be complaining that you have too much work to do at home? And another tip that really helped me out as a classroom teacher, I was an ELA teacher, so maybe this is a little bit easier, but the more I embraced opportunities for peer grading and peer assessment, and having the kids take some of that off of my plate in terms of grading papers and reviewing essays and all that, it saved me time, and it had me a little less stressed and worried about having to do so much in terms of not planning lessons. I mean, I still had to do that, but grading work and taking the students' work home with me.
I love, Dan, that you're bringing up the reminder to find a work-life balance. And we say balance, we don't mean balance of 50-50, but really ensuring that when you're at work, you're being as intentional and effective as possible. And then when you leave work, you're giving yourself permission to have that personal time with family members and friends and everything in between. I think it's interesting as we, share advice with educators, whether it be on Daily Drop-In or other podcasts or other blogs, anywhere that you're consuming content, I really love to dive deep into what are the actual action steps to ensure that that can happen. Because the concept of not taking work home, I think, is something that everyone is excited for. I don't know that many people leave school and they're like, gosh, I really hope that when I get home, I can work for 4 more hours. In some regards, sometimes it's nice to have that break and maybe you do something in the evening to kind of prep yourself for the next day. But my suggestion was never to take anything home that's going to take more than 15 minutes, right? If you need to check your email one more time, or if you need to organize a few pieces of paper, fine, you can have that before you head to bed. But I really love your suggestion of making sure that you're taking that time away from work. Let's get into what are the strategies that you've seen as an instructional coach that educators can implement in their classroom to help them not need to take those materials home. Because if an educator is taking something home, we assume it's because they really feel like it does need to be done in that time frame, and they're essentially running out of time in their day. So have you seen anything outside of peer review that's been helpful to kind of find that balance a little bit more effectively while you're in the school building?
Yeah. The first thing I'll point to is conferencing with students, and having students take more ownership over their own learning. Because again, I think that helps take it off the plate of just the teacher. It's not just the teacher who feels that pressure, that accountability. And I think when you conference with students, it frees you up a little bit in terms of your time because you can really get a lot done as you're conferencing with that student. You're building a relationship with them in terms of, kind of some social emotional stuff. You're getting to assess them in a way that is very unique and different from the standard kind of formative and summative assessments that you might do. And you could potentially use that as an opportunity to review their work instead of taking it home or doing it during a prep period or something like that. Another thing that has worked really well, and this is something that I did in my final few months a few years ago as a classroom teacher, but also that I've worked with teachers on in my coaching capacity, is what we call layered curriculum, which is very similar to choice boards. And to be honest, and I'm going to admit here, I don't know a ton about the grid method, but I really think it's similar to the grid method, which is front loading your instruction and your lessons to the point at which you have planned out a series of tiered lessons that your students kind of travel through. They start at the lowest tier and then they get a little harder and then they get to the top tier. There's a lot of choice built in. And I know that sometimes teachers kind of fear that level of planning. But for me as a teacher and for some of the teachers that I've coached over the past handful of years, front loading the lessons and the planning, it does a couple things. One, you don't have to spend as much time with it throughout that curricular unit. And then the other thing is it does free you up. Like in the classroom, it frees you up to really be that facilitator of learning versus feeling like you have to impart your knowledge on the kids every single day. And be that sage on the stage that we don't want teachers to be. And it was, for me, it was great to use in my own classroom. And the teachers that I've helped in terms of using a system and a structure like that, yes, it's a lot of planning up front, but it really does allow you to better balance that work life, flow that we were just talking about, and definitely fitting some things into your classroom instruction that you might not already be able to if you weren't, front loading and tiering or scaffolding your instruction.
Now, these are great reminders, Dan. I wanna revisit some of those suggestions you gave because those are really, really intentional routines that we can choose to refresh in our classrooms. And this is the time to do it, right? As April is wrapping up and we head into the month of May here in about a week or two, there's a lot of opportunities still here. I love your focus on conferencing. I think one of my biggest suggestions about striving to not take work home is ensuring that you're providing feedback organically in the classroom at a consistent rate. I think a lot of the work that educators do take home is related to the work to provide feedback. And so when we can find ways in the classroom to actually provide feedback in the moment versus later on, it does affect the work we're taking home because that is what I find to be the vast majority of what educators choose to take home is, those stacks of papers or going through worksheets that they are providing feedback on and then intend to hand back out to students in some way, shape, or form. So
I love that point. Actually, one of the things I was thinking about, even as you were saying that, was I'm a kind of a techie guy, and I'm wondering too if teachers do have to bring work home with them, if they might be able to, if the teacher themselves can maybe find a way to make it a little more fun for them by integrating maybe some technology to provide that feedback. Google Docs is a great way that I know a lot of teachers use, but maybe using the Mote extension, MOTE, to provide audio feedback. And that might save some time too. And it might make it a little more fun and interesting for the teacher to be able to provide that feedback for students. So again, I know my suggestion was not to take work home, but if you have to, then maybe you can find a way to make it a little quicker, easier, or more engaging for you than it would normally be as well. And there's another tool that I like to recommend a lot, which is Flipgrid. If you have your students using Flipgrid for just about everything, from creating videos to creating audio or presenting something, then you and even the other students can use that as a tech tool to provide some feedback for each other as well. I mean, there are a ton of tech tools that I think could help teachers with that feedback and maybe make things a little more fun for them when they're assessing and grading and taking work, if they have to take work home with them. But those are a couple that come to mind right away.
If you're looking for any strategies on how you can maybe better design the time that you have in front of students to allow for more effective conferencing, allow for that feedback, please feel free to reach out. I know you mentioned the grid method. That is one of the many ways that we love to support educators in structuring a classroom where they do move into that facilitation role rather than the content delivery system. And I really value the shout out for that, and then the focus on really the engagement with students during the learning experience, rather than just you standing up at the beginning of the classroom and speaking to students to get the information out. The hope would be that your classroom kind of evolves where you can truly be the facilitator of learning and engage with students throughout the process rather than simply being the delivery system of the information. So, Dan, really good points here. I know there's a lot that you're doing to coach teachers, coach other leaders. Will you tell us a little bit about the podcast if they want to choose to tune into that?
Yeah. The Leader of Learning podcast is what it's called. It started in 2017, so it's been around for a while now. I'll also, a little shameless plug. It's been, I think, along with a couple others on the Teach Better podcast network, like Josh Stamper you mentioned before. It's on a nice list of the top educational leadership podcasts. Right now it's number 7. So I'm proud of that. But it's basically exploring transformational leadership in education. And actually to your point, I fairly recently kind of, I don't want to say shifted, but better defined the why behind the podcast, which is to help educators grow their impact as instructional leaders. It was something, and I know, Ray, you're familiar with my story, but to make a long story short for anyone watching or listening, earlier this school year, I accepted and then actually fairly quickly transitioned out of an assistant principal role. And one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to come back into an instructional coaching role was to be more of an instructional leader. And I didn't necessarily think that I was getting as much opportunity to do that in my assistant principal role as I wanted. So the podcast really allows me, as well as my guests, to, I think, do just what I mentioned in my tagline there, which is to help educators grow their impact as instructional leaders, whether that be classroom teachers, coaches like me, administrators. I know we have a lot of leaders who listen. I know I even have a lot of educators who are in higher education listening to the show as well. And so it's fun for me. It's great because like 95% of my podcast episodes are interview episodes, and I get to learn from some really awesome experts who are, maybe practitioners or maybe people who are involved in education as those instructional leaders. And so just getting to talk to, a brand new guest on the show every time I have an episode, which lately has been every 2 weeks. So bi-weekly we release episodes. It's been really, really fun for me to do. I've learned a lot. And, I've said this before, like I'm kind of selfish. I think of me first, which is probably not the best thing for a content creator to say, because you want to provide value to your audience, your listeners, your viewers. But I bring on guests that I really want to learn from and about topics that I really want to learn more about. And I know that resonates with anyone who's listening anyway, but I really, I enjoy doing it for me too, because like I said, I've just learned so much since 4.5 years now that I've been doing the show.
Crazy. Yes, please go make sure that you go check out an episode of the podcast. Feel free to rate and review. We've discussed that on the show, that it's so helpful for our podcast hosts when you choose to rate and review and subscribe to a podcast, because it allows us to reach a larger audience. So we really appreciate those of you that are not only consuming the content, but also engaging the content and supporting the host of the work being done in education. Dan, I have a few recommendations here for our community. On a Wednesday, we always love to have some recommendations to further the work that we want to explore more about. So we're going to get into some recommendations before we wrap up here. We'll be right back. the Daily Drop-In this morning. We have Dan here with us to give us some recommendations. We love every single Wednesday. We love being able to provide you some insights, some suggestions on resources that have really impacted us to be learners and what you can continue to go explore if you want to learn more about a specific topic. Dan, I know you have an area of expertise in so many different spaces, not only in supporting educators in a coaching role, but also obviously with your experience with the podcast and leadership and everything in between. If you were to identify a few resources that have dramatically impacted you, maybe even your routines, if you're open to it, anything that you can suggest for us here today?
I'm going to point to a couple of books first, and then I'll try and narrow down my vast podcast listening to maybe a couple of podcast recommendations too. Books that have really meant a lot to me, impacted my practices. First, I'll start with it's called Lead from the Heart. And it's written by a guy named Mark Crowley, who actually was a podcast guest of mine way back, like 4 years ago when I started the podcast. That book had a tremendous impact on me, and it actually spoke to a lot of the things that I ended up researching and writing about in my dissertation during my doctoral work, as well as things that I bring with me in my leadership role at my school just about every day. And so if anyone has not read that, I say that because it's not really an education book. It's really more of a businessy book, but it really talks about being more of a compassionate type of a leader, and something I'm a big fan of, and I put into my work a lot, which is like transformational leadership. So that's the first one, Lead from the Heart. Another one that impacted me a lot, as especially an instructional coach, but in any kind of leadership role, especially in education, it's called the Coaching Habit. And that one, the author there is Michael Bungay Smith, I believe his name is. And it talks a lot about, of course, coaching, but how to really be a good listener and how to ask the right questions. That's such a big part of his book. And I think it's such a big part of what I do as a coach and what leaders should be doing in terms of working with, but helping to grow anyone who works under them, let's say, any staff members. So really understanding how to coach and how to pull things out of people by asking the right questions. So those are some sort of not super popular, I think, education related, but not specific to education books that helped me out a lot. Actually, the other one too is called, I think it's called Switch by Chip and Dan Heath. That one's probably a little more popular. Again, not super education related, but that one talks about a lot of things that I like to speak on too, which is like how to like change leadership, right? How to break through and kind of meet resistance where it's at, and break through it and help lead and guide changes in your work and in your organization. Podcasts is always those are always hard for me to recommend because I listen to so many and I have my own. Obviously, if people are watching or listening to this one, they already know about Teach Better and the Daily Drop-In, so I won't mention that, although I guess I just did. Some of the ones that I've really been enjoying, I'm a pretty big fan of George Couros, and he's a former guest on my show as well. He's got a podcast where he's coming out with content at least twice a week, every week. That one has been great. I feel like he started coming out with a podcast and then he kind of revived it because he's been putting out a lot of content, which is great. I love listening to him. Another one that I know a lot of Teach Better people are connected to is Che and Pav show. Used to be the Staff Room podcast. Now it's like the Che and Pav show, I think. But they are great to listen to. And I feel like they kind of came out of nowhere a couple years ago and no one knew them. And all of a sudden they burst onto the scene and now they have an extremely popular show. And I love listening to them. And although he's a little bit of a competitor of sorts because we're both on the list of educational leadership shows, Josh Stamper, I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to Josh and his work on his show, his work on the Teach Better Podcast Network and the conference, like you said, with Podcasters Row, Aspire, the Aspire to Lead leadership podcast. I don't know. It's got like a long title, right? But basically, Aspire. If you don't listen to it, just look up Aspire, and you'll find that show by Josh. He does a great job too, and I really love the content and the guests that he brings on. So that's another favorite that I like listening to as well.
Oh, I love the shout outs, and definitely no competition. You can never have enough content of tips and tricks and learning opportunities. So
I've learned over the years as a content creator that, especially in the education space, people are really friendly and really supportive of one another. I mean, I joke about that. Josh and I are friends. We're in Voxer groups together. We're part of sort of that same podcast community. So we don't compete with one another. We support each other a lot, actually. And the other thing too that I've realized over the years is that even if you have a similar topic to someone else, and you've probably experienced this as an author, right? Like the way you say it, the way you present the information is going to be so unique to you. I talk about this a lot. I've put out some videos fairly recently on imposter syndrome, and not to go too deep down that rabbit hole, but like it's one of the ways to get out of that imposter syndrome and create content and put yourself out there, writing, blogging, speaking, podcasting, and creating content like this. Just don't compare yourself to others and realize that you have a unique perspective on things that people may prefer to watch or to listen to the way you present it versus someone else. I mean, we're talking about education here. We've all experienced where like one teacher we don't love, but another teacher, another year, maybe we have same subject area, two very different ways of presenting information. We like one, we don't like the other. Why? Probably because of the way that they either present the information or just the way that we connect with them. So yeah, we don't compete, we support, but I do realize a lot that people just may prefer someone's voice over another or someone's style over another, and that's all right.
we'll definitely continue to find podcasts that resonate with you. There's so many out there and plenty of listening time to go enjoy it. There's not a nicer person out there than Joshua _Stamper. So we do love him here on the Teach Better family. As we wrap up the show, Dan, I do want to make sure that our community can stay connected to you. And so I want to make sure, would you share your social media contact information so people can add you to their PLN?
Definitely. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And thank you to anyone listening or watching and hopefully wanted to connect if we're not already. It's down there. If you're watching, of course, if you're just listening, you're like, what does down there mean? But it is on the screen if you're watching. If you're not, then I will explain. It's at Dr._Kreiness. Kreiness is KREINESS. To find the podcast, of course, you can look up Leader of Learning on any podcast app that you use to listen, or head to the website leaderoflearning.com. I've tried to make it really easy. I've tried to make all my social media the same at Dr._Kreiness now, although I've kind of gone back and forth over the years with Leader of Learning, but it should all be at Dr._Kreiness, and the website is leaderoflearning.com, and find the podcast anywhere where you listen to podcasts.
So appreciate you being on, Dan. It was so wonderful that you're able to wake up bright and early on your spring break to share your voice with us. We really appreciate all your insight that you were able to share. And even though you hopefully have a nap in the near future, I appreciate you kicking off so many educators' mornings this morning.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Really looking forward to meeting you, as well as hopefully a lot of people who are listening and watching in October for the Teach Better 2022 conference.
I love it. For everyone else, please enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Don't forget, we have Brain Break later today. And then tomorrow, we not only have Daily Drop-In, but a very special live with featured speaker for the Teach Better Conference, Kevin Butler, who many of you have seen on the Kelly Clarkson Show and all over Instagram. So plenty to celebrate this week. We will see you later today for a Brain Break fun. And we hope you all have a wonderful Wednesday. Bye, friends.